Hey, welcome back to Moonpie Creations. Today, we try to turn somebody else's mess and discover some weird crap inside. In all seriousness, my buddy Chris over at Chris's Gift Shop got a hold of me, said if I poured a blank, would you turn it? And I went against my better judgment, and I told him, sure, let's get this done. Before I started turning this, I went over and watched his video. This is a clip of it, him pouring the resin in and talking about it. It looks pretty innocuous and looks pretty harmless at this point, but we'll learn in the future that that may not have been the case. So here it is, a couple of weeks later after he's done pouring it, and I've got it, and I'm opening it up right now, and he used these little spacers to space out the wood, and those will come back to haunt me soon. As I pull the blank out, I realize it's pretty nice looking. It's got a little bit of purple, some white, some green, and I think it's cherry wood that's in there. And it's a very nice looking blank. I start checking this thing out, and I'm not really sure what I want to do with it. As I've said in the past, I really don't like turning other people's castings because you never know what you're going to get. But this one looks pretty cool to me, so I'm going to give it a shot. I put this collar on there with some screws, some deck screws, and then that makes it easier to get up on my lathe because I just take my chuck and open it up and it tightens up. And there it is on my lathe. Through the magic of YouTube editing, I've got it up on the lathe. This is actually about 2 weeks later, and I start turning this thing. And it's fairly hard. Not sure what kind of resin this is, but it is hardened up real nice. But there's a problem, and that is that my carbide tip is fairly dull. So I'm going to have to go sharpen that here in a minute. A lot of times when you're turning, you really don't know what shape or design that you're looking to do until the wood or the blank speaks to you. But this one right here, I'm trying to get it down to the design of the wood to see what the design looks like. And then from there, I can ask it what it's going to be. I mentioned earlier that my carbide tip was starting to dull out. And it was. So I decided to switch over to my gouge, my 3/4 inch gouge, but that wasn't working well on this blank. I'm not really sure, again, what kind of resin this is, but it's extremely hard. Since the gouge really wasn't working out, I decided to go get some lapping fluid in a 1000 grit card and sharpen the carbide tip that I have. I thought I had a few more in my tool chest, but apparently I didn't, so I kept on having to sharpen this one. The resin that I was using here was extremely sticky and staticky, and you can see it is stuck to my camera right here, right in front of you, but I didn't notice it, so I kept going. You can see that I'm getting closer and closer to the wood showing up through the resin. I was kind of hoping to get maybe a globe out of this, but that didn't quite work out as I kept on having to cut it down. I didn't want to get too small. When I do the bottom of my projects, I usually try to make it a little bit concave, and that's what I'm doing here. When you do that, the bottom rim will sit flat all the way across. You may be thinking to yourself, he just had a catch. And you're right, that's because I overextended my tool over my tool rest. So the big question is, do you use a mortise or a tenon when doing the turning? And what do? Well, it all depends on what size the project is. The larger the project, I usually use a tenon. And when I'm doing smaller projects like this, I'll use a mortise. Using a detail tool, I can put a little dovetail into the mortise, and that'll help the chuck grab onto it. Something important you need to remember is making sure that your drill rotates in the right direction. If not, it'll throw off the little sanding pad. So when you sand, a lot of times a lot of dimples or bubbles will come up, and you can use the Star Bond clear to fill those in, and they're hardly even noticeable. So I've only sanded this up to about 100 grit, and right now I'm putting on some sanding sealer, and this will help raise the grain in the wood and get some of those marks out of the wood. Using the drill to sand doesn't always get out all the marks, but hand sanding up to about 600 does. So I hadn't used my branding iron in a long time, so I decided I wanted to give it a shot on this one. And it came out all right. I wasn't sure what kind of finish I was going to use, but I decided to use this wood honey here from Total Boat. It gives a pretty good luster to the wood, and it actually hardens over 72 hours. To apply this stuff, you're going to put it on pretty generously, let it sit for about 15 minutes, and then wipe it right off. After using the Total Boat wood honey, I decided to throw on a couple of coats of the OB Shine juice just to make it pop. So I'm going to use 3 different drill bits here to drill this out, but it's really unnecessary. I've found that you can use the big, large 3-inch Forstner bit, and I won't have any troubles with it. I know you're dying to understand what I was talking about at the beginning of the video, where I talk about not liking to turn other people's casting. Well, I'm going to show you in just a second what that is. As I turn the bowl, I realized that there's some orange that's coming through, and I thought at first that it might be some resin that he put in there, but it wasn't. That, Chris, is one of your little spreader things. It's inside here. Now, I know you're asking yourself, what does it matter? It's a soft plastic and the resin is harder. But the problem is that the PLA dulls my carbide tips a lot quicker than the resin does. Another issue I found I would have was that the PLA would get hot and it would wrap around my tool and the tool rest and kind of restrict what my tool was able to do. I'm not saying the PLA piece is a bad idea because it does help you space your pieces enough, but it kept getting tied up on my tool rest and it was a pain. I kept on having to shut the machine off and then start again. As I edit this video, I'm starting to realize that I'm not being honest with you as my subscribers what's going on. This bowl blank I got probably about 6 months ago from Chris, and I was supposed to do the collab with him, and I failed him. I didn't do it. I put it up on my lathe, and I sat there and looked at it for 2 months, and I didn't touch it. Even now, as I turn the final bit of this, I'm really not motivated to do it. My motivation for turning and woodworking projects is about gone right now, and I'm struggling to get that back. I'm not really sure what to do or how to do it. It's just funny that I blame it on work and family and such, but it's just really the motivation portion to get out here. Well, enough of this whining and crying. I know you guys came here to see some turning, so let's get on with this. Let's get this all sanded up, and then we'll get a finish put on it, and we'll be done. As I finish this bowl up, I want to encourage you guys to go over to Chris's channel. It's up here on the right-hand corner there, and give him a little bit of love. And with that, it's a finished bowl. And I thank you guys for subscribing to my channel, and I hope you have a great Thanksgiving and an awesome Christmas.